Hi everyone, welcome to Airfield's Craft and Cook Along. My name is Amy, I work in the education department. So today we're going to be making two simple recipes that can get you crafty in the kitchen. So the first one that we're going to tackle is going to be an edible Play-Doh. So this involves a little bit of cooking in order to make sure that any of the flour used is cooked and not raw, so it doesn't give us any sore tummies. So we're going to need some corn flour, some milk, and a little bit of sugar. And these ingredients are going to be combined and heated on the hob to make us a nice basic dough. So with our corn flour, the amount that we need for this is 60 grams. So I'm going to measure out 60 grams of corn flour with my weighing scales here. So I've got my bowl on top. I've checked that my dial has adjusted back to 0, and I'm going to measure out 60 grams. 60 grams is quite a small amount to measure out, but just try your best. So that is about 60 grams there. And I'm going to add that into my mixing bowl. The next ingredient going into our mixing bowl is some milk. So we need 120 mils of milk. So that'll be the same as grams. So you can measure out 120 mils of milk, or if you have a measuring jug handy, you can use that for that. Now, that's about 120 mils of milk. I'm going to also add that into my mixing bowl. And the final ingredient for our edible dough is going to be a small bit of sugar, just to give it a bit of taste. So I'm going to add 3 level tablespoons of sugar into the mix. There's my first one. There's my second one. And there is my third one. Now all of these ingredients are going to be combined using a whisk. I have a metal whisk here, and you're just going to slowly move the mixture around and combine it with the liquid. So this can be a little bit tricky for small hands. So just combine it enough so that all of the flour is dissolved and the sugar is combined. We've already got the basics of our dough ready and combined. We're just going to heat the mixture to turn it into a dough that will be moldable and we can make some shapes with. So just check for any lumps in the mixture. Mine looks pretty smooth and it's kind of foamy on top. So that foam will disappear in a minute while we're heating up the rest of the pot. So turn your pot on to a low heat. So this is where you're going to need a grown-up's supervision. So I'm going to turn it on to a medium heat. So I'm going to put it on 4. My dial actually goes all the way up to 9, so 4 for me is approximately medium heat. And you're going to then add your dough mixture into the pot, and that'll heat slowly. So before it starts coming together, you can mix using your whisk. Make sure you get all of the little bits out. Let me move this back so you can see. And I'm just going to whisk lightly until the dough starts to form. So at this point, if you do have any food colouring, you can add a small little drop in if you want to add some colour to your dough. I'm going to keep mine white because I might have a go at shaping a snowman. I know it was snowing last weekend and it's still a bit of a winter theme, so I might shape a snowman for myself. I'm going to keep mine white. So as this starts to heat up, the flour will start to clump together with the milk and it'll turn into a tacky dough. Once it's all combined, we're going to add it to the fridge, and this will just help the dough to not be as sticky and will be easier for us to mold with our hands. So it can be really fun to make your own Play-Doh and your own activities, but usually they don't taste very nice, whereas this recipe I find actually does taste quite nice, just to make sure that if you little ones are going to be eating the dough, that you've got clean hands when you're molding the dough, so that it's no problem if it goes into your mouth and that you use it on a clean surface. So I've got a wooden spoon with me as well, so this will just help to combine the dough once it does start to stick together. So you've got to be patient when this is coming together. You don't want it to come together and lump together too fast, because then you'll end up with a really lumpy dough. So you just have to be patient and allow it to heat up very slowly. And at the same time, just making sure that it's not burning at the bottom. Continue to stir it and to just check at it to make sure it's all going well. For the next recipe, for the cake pop recipe, I just have some leftover Madeira cake that I wasn't going to eat. So with your cake pops, it's best to kind of use up any little bits and pieces around the house, because you're going to remold the cake into a different shape. So I just have some leftover Madeira cake here, or if you have kind of leftover muffins that maybe have gone slightly stale, they're the kind of things that are perfect to use to repurpose into something a little bit more exciting and a little bit new. That's what I'm going to use for mine. Okay, the bottom is starting to form a bit of a skid, so this is the point where you want to continuously stir it. So when you start to see lumps forming, that's when you really have to pay attention. It's looking good. This is definitely practicing your patience anyway. Gotta take it easy, go nice and slow. If we had made this recipe with water, that would also be perfectly fine. It just doesn't taste as nice. But it is perfectly fine to make this recipe with water, or if you wanted to substitute for a different kind of milk, that's also perfectly fine. So soy milk or almond milk. And I'm just going to let a skin form on the bottom there, so that when I combine it, it'll start to stick. A little splash. So it's starting to form bubbles on the top, which means the heat is coming right up, which is exactly what we want to see. Lots of lumps coming together at the bottom. This is when it'll thicken up quite quickly. And just keep stirring. So if there's more than one of you at home, make sure you're all getting a chance with the stirring. It can be quite tough on your arms as well, so it is good to share that task. Now mine's starting to get really lumpy. So just make sure you keep stirring. I'm really excited to make my snowman. It's going to be very cute. Now it's almost ready to come off the heat entirely. So just keep stirring. And mine is quite smooth. Managed to keep the lumps out of it. If you didn't and yours looks quite lumpy, don't worry about it. You'll just have slightly lumpy dough. That's no problem. Oh, I knocked my hob off. That's okay. So at this stage, it's going to look quite gloopy like that, but we need it to cool before it's going to be moldable in our hands. Here we are, I've got a plastic bowl that's suitable for the fridge. So I'm going to scoop out my dough into that bowl and allow it to cool down before I add it to the fridge. You can see nice and gloopy, but also quite smooth at the same time. Make sure not to touch it with your hands just yet because it's going to be hot. There we go. Perfect. That's exactly what we want it to look like. It's going to be nice and sticky when it's all cooled down. Now we'll just leave that for a minute and then we'll pop it into the fridge. You can kind of mold it around with your wooden spoon. Might need a grown-up to help you with that. But you can see it's starting to form into a dough and it's not leaving any sticky bits on the bowl on the inside. Whoops. That's exactly what we want it to look like. Super. I'm just going to leave that aside for now. And with your pot that you used to make your dough, just want to make sure that you can add some hot water to that now so that it's not too difficult to get off in the end because this can be very sticky. So just put it into the sink with some hot water on top and that'll save you some trouble. Super, so that is part one of our edible craft done. Now we're going to move on to our cake pops. So if we get ourselves a large mixing bowl like this, so we're first going to sweeten our cream cheese. So the reason why I'm using cream cheese is it's just a very easy thing to work with. So if I was using something like butter, it can be quite difficult to mash up, whereas cream cheese is very easy for our hands. So if we want to add in about 100 grams of cream cheese into our bowl, and then we're going to add in our sweet syrup, and that's going to give us the nice sweet taste that we're going to get off of our cake pops. Now I've got myself a spoon, and I'm going to add in 100 grams. So this is a 200 gram tub, so it's approximately half of it. There we go. And with our sweet syrup, I'm just going to do 2 big squirts. There's one, and there's two. And then we're going to combine that together. So you could use something like a frosting if you had that left over, or if you have access to an electric beater, you could also make yourself a buttercream frosting and use that. Now when this goes into the fridge, the cake batter mixture, it should harden up and be easier to put onto your lollipop sticks. So there's my cream cheese mixture. At this stage, if you want to check if it's sweet enough, with a clean finger, just taste it. And that's sweet enough for me, so I'm happy. If you need a little bit of extra sweetener, go ahead. And then with your leftover cake, you just have to break it up and crumble it in. So if you had kind of a tea cake or something at the weekend and it's gone a bit stale, this is the perfect way to use that up. So you can just crumble it up. So this recipe that I'm going to make today doesn't actually need any molds, which is great, but that means that we have to be very careful and very gentle with our cake pops when we're shaping them. And each mixture is probably going to be slightly different because you can use whatever combination of cake you want. So if you had, as I said, leftover muffins or anything like that, just have to make sure that the ratios are right. But I'll show you what my batter looks like when it's ready so that you can just check and see if yours looks similar. And I'm going to mix that all together. And again, this is going to be something that we're going to be able to mold with our hands, which is great. It's fun to get your hands sticky and dirty every now and again. So this mixture is going to make about 6 cake pops. So I have 6 lollipop sticks I'm going to use. If you just want to make little cake balls, you can go ahead and do that. If you don't have access to lollipop sticks, or if you couldn't find them, that's also fine. Now, so this is what my batter looks like. So it should be the consistency where you can squish it and roll it. So that's what we want it to look like. We want our cake ball to probably be just slightly larger than that one there. But before we shape it, we're going to put it into the fridge and we're going to check on our other dough. Our dough might actually need to go into the fridge. I just left it at room temperature. Now, you can see the way that it's picking up any of the leftover bits inside the bowl. It's exactly the way that we want it to look. And I am going to add this to the fridge for a few minutes before we shape it. Lovely. Now I'm just going to check on my snowman dough. It's actually cool enough for me to touch, so I'm not going to put it into the fridge. But if it's too hot for you guys, just get your grown-up to check, and maybe they want to put it into the fridge. But we do need to knead it, so if we knead it, it's going to stop being so sticky. I have a chopping board in front of me. I'm just going to use that to knead it a little bit. So here's my lovely chopping board, and I'm just going to squish it on my clean chopping board. Like that. Actually feels quite nice and warm. It's not hot at all. So when you knead it as well, it's going to get rid of some of those lumps. Looking good. If you're like me and it's cool enough for you to mold, you don't need to put it into the fridge at all. And while our cake pop batter is getting nice and solid, we can make some things out of our dough. So I've given some suggestions of things that you can make with your dough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a snowman. So I'm going to divide this into 3 pieces. I actually might make 2 snowmen, so let's divide it into 2 pieces first of all. You can see this dough is really nice to work with. There's very little sticky residue on my hands. And I'm going to then divide it into 3 balls. And this is going to be my snowman. So there is the base of my snowman there. There's the middle. It should be sticky enough that it sticks together, and you can rearrange and change it up. And there's my snowman's head. So this should be gooey enough that it'll stay together. And there I have my little snowman. So when I melt the chocolate for the cake balls, we can then go about maybe making some more decorations for the snowman. So there's my first snowman and the rest of the balls here. So I might make him a friend so he's not lonely. You can also taste the dough at this stage. Got your clean hands. I quite like the taste. There's the middle section, and maybe have a little bit of leftover dough there as well. So I've got my 2 snowmen there, and as you can see, it's very easy to remold this dough. So if I just squish them, you can remake whatever you want. And just as long as your hands are kept clean, you can keep playing with this dough. If you're going to keep the dough for a few hours or so, I wouldn't eat this a few hours later. So I would play with this maybe for about half an hour and then I would eat it. So because it does have dairy in it, it can't be left out for too long. And it has been kind of cooked, so we would want to be consuming this within the next half an hour to an hour. But it's a really fun dough. You can keep it for as long as you want. See how you get on. I'd love to hear how long it lasted. If you're not going to eat it, that's no problem. But it's just good to know that you can eat it and it tastes pretty decent. Rather like other doughs that you can make that are food safe, but they don't taste very nice. So there is my dough. And I'm going to check on my cake batter dough. So it looks pretty good. So we can test it by breaking off a golf ball sized amount. We can roll it. This is really good for rolling skills and to get your hands moving in opposite directions. Get your hands moving, the blood flowing into your hands. And I have my lollipop sticks here. If you have a few children who are making these at home, I would recommend writing their names on the lollipop sticks just to make sure that they know who made what. And we're going to stick the lollipop stick about halfway into the cake ball. And we are going to put it onto our board over here. One, two, let's measure it out. 3, 4, 5. So I've made enough for 5 cake balls. which is perfectly fine. Sticking our lollipop sticks in. So stick them in about halfway, make sure that it doesn't go all the way through. You might end up with a broken cake ball. The third one. Number 4. And my final one. And then I'm going to stick these back into the fridge while I melt my chocolate. Okay. I'm going to put them all back into the bowl, stick them back in the fridge, and we will melt our chocolate. Now for the melting of my chocolate, I'm going to need a plastic bowl, so one that's kind of got a deep base that it'll sit into a pot, but not so deep that it's actually touching the pot. And I'm going to need a saucepan of warm water. So the pan that I have is about this size, and it has got about a third the way up is filled with water. So I'm going to put that onto the heat. The water that I added was warm water. If you've got a kettle, you can go ahead and use that. And we want that to get up to a boiling heat. Just going to move my snowman dough out of the way over here. And we're going to melt ourselves some chocolate. So I'm going to use white chocolate. I'm just going to get that. So this is my white chocolate here. I'm going to break that up into my bowl. My water's already starting to simmer. And I'm going to use about over half a bar. And I'm going to break that up. So there might be a little bit of extra left over, and you can use that for your dough, or if you wanted to get other pieces of fruit and dip them into the chocolate, just so it's not wasted, go ahead. But it's always better to melt more than we need with the cake pops, because sometimes the chocolate can be a bit unpredictable. But your melted chocolate always be used. I like to melt chocolate and dip banana into it and then put that into the fridge, so that could be an option for you. There we go. Now before I start to melt this, I'm actually going to take my cake pops out so that they're ready for me. Now, so there they are out of the fridge, keep them away from the steam. And I'm going to put my bowl on top. And we're going to melt our chocolate. I'm just using white cooking chocolate, which should do pretty well when we're melting it. So while the chocolate is melting, while the grown-ups are doing that, the kids can be playing again with their dough and making different kinds of shapes. So this dough is really pretty sticky for a while afterwards, and you can make any kind of shape that you want, or if you want to eat them, that's also okay. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. I don't want it to overboil. I've also got my tray ready for my cake pops, so this will be where I'm going to put my cake pops onto after they've been dipped in chocolate. It's just a tray with a sheet of baking parchment on the top of it. So just check on our cake pops. So We want to make sure that they stay in the stick. If they do fall off, that's okay, because when we put them in the fridge again with the chocolate on, that should encourage it to stay on. But if you do want to just pinch the top where the stick is stuck into, that can help them to stay on a little bit. I'm going to do that, just to pinch where they've been inserted. Here we go. There we go. My chocolate is still melting. Moving it around can help. As soon as it's all melted, we can dip our cake balls or our cake pops. Nearly ready. This is just a much safer way than in the microwave. I find that often if you microwave chocolate, it spoils. Okay, this is ready. So I'm going to take the chocolate off the heat. And if you've got a plastic bowl, it won't be too hot to touch, and you can just take it off. And we'll turn off our hob, very important. I'm actually going to get rid of this hot water, put it in a safe place. And now we are ready to dip our cake ball. So just make sure that the chocolate's all nice and liquidy. And we can take out our wooden spoon. And with our cake balls, we're just going to dip them into the chocolate. So twist them. You might have to use your fingers a little bit. Like that. There you go. Some of it will drip down. If you've got sprinkles or anything that you want to add to it, you can do that as well. So there's my first one done. My second one. There we go. Now sprinkles on top or whatever other kind of decorations you might want. When you're flipping them back down, just support it so it doesn't come off the stick. There we go. Third one. Out. There we go. Just be very gentle with them when you're pulling them out, that they don't fall apart. And you can always scoop. Ooh, coming off my fingers. Scoop the chocolate down. You could also do this with apples as well if you had them. Okay. You just have to be very gentle with them. And my last one. There we go. Got very sticky fingers, but that is our cake pops. And I have mine on a tray here. And I'm just going to add these into the fridge, and they should harden up within the next 15 minutes. And then when you're peeling them off, just be very careful with the sticks that you don't pull the sticks up first. You need to lift the cake balls off the thing at the bottom first. You can actually drizzle some of the leftover chocolate on the base of the balls as well, because that will harden up. May as well use it. Here we go. Lovely. Now I'm going to stick them in the fridge. Super. So that is everything that I have to show you today. So I would love to see pictures of your cake pops and pictures of whatever you've made with your edible Play-Doh. And I really hope that you enjoyed this craft cook along, and I hope to see you again soon. Any questions, you can ask them now, and I'll be able to answer them into the chat box. Super. Thanks for cooking along with me. Bye.